So, welcome everyone to the next episode of Outside of Life, and I'm super happy to have Bonnie here. Hello.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
So I'm super happy that you joined us here, and I would like you to tell us a little bit more about yourself and what is your specialty, and for maybe people who don't know you yet.
Yeah, I would love to. I'm Bonnie, and I am a surface pattern designer, which means that I get to create artwork for products like wallpaper and fabric and stationery and ribbon and anything that could benefit from illustrations or pattern work. And I also teach other people how to do the same thing. So I teach several online courses on Adobe Illustrator and surface pattern design. Um, I get to work from home, from anywhere. I currently live in the mountains of North Carolina and just get to do my dream job.
Perfect. Then that sounds very dreamy, and I'm sure everyone is listening. Okay, so how did you get to this, and maybe also how did you choose this dream? How did you discover that this is what you want to do? And I guess you like to do art before, maybe, or you
Yeah,
just have the inclination. But how did you start? Okay, this is what I'm going to do, or this is I like this.
yeah, because it wasn't always something that I knew that I wanted to do, but I did grow up in a very creative home. My mom is a sewer and owned a quilt shop for most of my childhood, so I was always around fabric. I was always sewing, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I did go to college. I went to business school. And after I graduated and got married, this was in 2008, really decided that I wanted to be a fabric designer. And that realization happened because I went back to work for my mom, and my primary job was meeting with reps and looking at fabric collections and choosing what we wanted for the store. And I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I come from everyone in my family is an entrepreneur, and that's why I had gone to business school. But um, didn't so when I decided that I had this big, huge dream, I really had no idea how to make it happen. I did love to draw. I love to sketch. I love to work on the computer, but I definitely did not have the skill set that I needed. I did not know Adobe Illustrator, which is the primary program that we work in. Would not have necessarily called myself an artist at the time. And so I debated on whether to go back to design school and started filling out applications and looked at my husband and just said, you know what? I'm just going to try before I uproot us and go back to school and all this stuff. I'm just going to try everything I can to learn on my own. And so part of my story is that this dream was so big and so overwhelming that I let about 6 months go by without doing anything, just really having this dream and letting it sit there. But I didn't know how to get started. So I woke up one morning and realized that it had been 6 months without any progress on my part, and decided to start doing one thing every single day in efforts of moving me towards accomplishing that dream. And it sounds so simple, and it kind of is. It's that simple. So that first day was like sitting down and Googling how to do it, how to become a fabric designer. And one small effort every day eventually led to all the right questions that I needed to ask and all the right things that I needed to learn. Some days it was a small thing, 5 minutes, and other days it was, an entire day spent on working on it. But that led me through about a year of learning Adobe Illustrator on my own. And at the end of 18 months, I had a complete body of work that I was incredibly proud of, a portfolio in hand. And I went to International Quilt Market and met with my dream company and got my first contract as a fabric designer in 2012. So I still work with Art Gallery Fabrics. I do 2 collections a year for them. And it's also led me on to license many other pieces of artwork and collections on many products all around the world. But it's that learning for me that at the time was very hard. Um, there was really no one teaching at the time. It was that piece of my story that really inspired me to teach and give back, and help other people who wanted to do the same thing.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, because you're completely right. And I also liked art when I was like younger or in a school, but I also went to business school because I'm okay, like, what do I do with art? Because at the
Yeah.
time, no one was sharing how can it be done, right? So yeah, definitely doing the classes for others so they can potentially do this. That's super helpful. And a lot of the questions I'm also getting, I'm sure you too, it's more like, is it too late to start now? Because a lot of people are like, I am too young, I am too old, market is too overcrowded. So what is your opinion
Yeah.
for on that?
Oh, you can probably guess my opinion is that it's definitely never too late. The market is really not saturated at all. Surface pattern design has seemingly blown up over the last 5 or so years. However, if you go on the street and introduce yourself as such, most people have no idea what you're talking about.
They're
So
like, what?
it's really, yeah. If you think about all the products in the world, I had a student recently go to like a super shopping center and just went in with the one mission with a notepad to write down all of the products that she saw a pattern on. And she had to stop. She had hundreds of products in the store, and she finally just stopped just to bring in the point. That there are so many industries and so many products and so many people who are licensing artists' work for products. So it's really not saturated. But I also always believe that there's always room for everyone. There's always room at the top. There's room for people's perspectives and their artwork in the world, now more than ever.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, because there is art everywhere, and when you think about it, there has to be someone who creates it. So why
Absolutely.
not you, right?
Why
Or
not you?
anyone? Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
So definitely. But if we back up a little bit more when you were just starting out, how did you
Mhm.
plan all of this? Because sometimes people have either full-time job or like quitting the job, and because it takes a
Yeah.
lot of time, like you have to either save up a lot or you have to live
Mhm.
with someone who can support you. So what would you
Yeah.
recommend there, or maybe what was your story there?
Yeah. So you're right. It does take quite a lot of time, and it does take quite a lot of sacrifice. I did not have children at the time. I do have two small children now, but when I was at the very beginning, we didn't have kids yet. So really what we did was work really hard at saving a little bit of money. We didn't have much money. We struggled pretty significantly for a lot of years. We were living in California at the time, and my husband was making right above the poverty line for California. And, and here I am, not making any money. I had a blog and an Etsy shop, and so I did trickle. I trickled in money, but I was definitely making under $10,000 a year. And so we saved through, I do talk about this a little bit. We set up an automatic withdrawal because that's the only way to actually save money to come out twice a month. It was like $100 or something, maybe $200. And we saved until we had about a 6-month reserve of money. And then we sold a car. So we only had one car. We lived definitely, very small. We lived in a very small apartment, and we just didn't have money that we could just spend. So we lived very tight. But my husband saw my passion and saw how hard I worked on this dream. It was not for lack of hard work, let's just say that, and time being spent on learning it. And so he just completely supported me. And it took about in 2013, I started actually making a little bit of money. And since that year, I have been able to double my income every year since that year. So in 2013, 12, I made about $12,000 and have since doubled it every year. So I'll leave that math up to your viewers, but
They would be like, okay, okay.
yeah. So that's my story. I was able to meet his income in about the second or third year, and then it just has kept going. And a large part of that is due to licensing and being able to really wrap my head around recurring revenue and residual income, which I won't get geeky over right now, but do talk a lot about the opportunities that all of those present for artists.
Yeah, yeah, because there are a lot of opportunities and you can definitely make it happen. But as you say, the planning at the beginning, it's, yeah, very hard and you just have to persist and continue because you might
Absolutely.
feel like, okay, maybe it will not work or like, what if no one would like my art or no one would want to
Yeah,
license it? And, but
yeah.
there will be someone who would actually like it. It just, yeah.
There will be someone. And so, to specifically answer your question, the thing for me that I feel like is the key to success really is long-term consistency. I see a lot of people start out and get discouraged at the very beginning, and then they kind of waffle off and they don't make it. But it is the people who are consistent over the long term, putting in the work. There's no other way to get around it. That find success and stay, stay at the top for a really long time. So it's definitely possible. Just takes consistency and doing. I still do that one thing every day. My goals and dreams keep changing, and I still use that trick on myself all the time to actually kind of cut through the overwhelm and just start being productive towards what a goal I want to meet. So
Yeah, yeah, because you just need to set the goal for yourself. So, was that at
yeah,
that time that you are going for that convention because you want to present your portfolio, right? And
yeah,
as I remember, you don't have an agent, right? Or you didn't have an agent either at that time.
nope,
So, how
nope,
did you then choose the art directors to meet with, or like the website?
yeah,
Was it going through the shop and looking at
yeah,
and stuff like, okay, this is a
yeah.
company producing
It
this.
was.
Okay.
It was actually. I was very familiar with the companies from working at a shop. All their names are on the selvage, and I knew where I felt like my work fit. So there were a handful of companies that I knew I wanted to meet with. Of course, Art Gallery was at my very top because I felt, so this is the advice I give my students, is when you're looking at a company to consider licensing with, go to their website, go to their social media profiles. Do you see that your work fits in nicely with what they currently have? Would you be proud to send people to their website and tell everyone that you are licensing with them? If the answer is no, then keep looking. But if the answer is yes, then definitely try to find submission guidelines or give them a call and ask for the art director, which sounds really scary, but it's not. It's not as scary as you might think. And so when I was gearing up, so Quilt Market is a little bit different than most trade shows. It is a industry, it's not open to the public. So you have to have credentials to get in. It's an industry trade show. And really the purpose is so that companies can show their products to shops, and shops place wholesale orders. But the kind of unique thing that happens there, so artists are not there showing artwork. That's not this type of show. That would be like Surtex or Print Source. And if you wanted to show your work, you should have a booth. But at Quilt Market, because the companies are there showing to shops, it's fairly unique because the art directors are all there as well. So if you can get in the show and email the art directors in advance, many times they will be able to set up an appointment to see you while you're there, even though it's not the main intention of the show. It's definitely something that happens, and a really beautiful way to get face to face with someone, which can oftentimes be so important.
Yeah, because that definitely helps also to see the art directors, if you would fit as a person or the vice versa, if you like each
Yeah,
other and the collaboration can actually
yeah,
work. So yeah, definitely helps.
absolutely. Yeah.
And when you mention also the other conventions, if someone is just like thinking about like bringing a portfolio, do you have advice there? Like, do you have to have a booth, or can you actually bring a portfolio with you and just maybe try to schedule appointments with people?
Yeah. So for surface pattern design or illustration shows like Surtex, Blueprint, and Print Source, you really, if you want to show your work, you really need to have a booth. Because if you go, and now you can go walk the floor just to see the show before you exhibit, but you really should not go with your work in hand, because that takes away from the artists who did pay and go to the trouble to have a booth. And so it's very, very frowned upon at those shows to go with that ulterior motive to kind of steal away the art director's attention from the people who have done the work. So that is something good, a very good question, and something good to know before you, because innocently it might seem, totally fine, but it is frowned upon at the licensing shows.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Because I was thinking about going to look somewhere as well. Like
Yeah.
these shows I haven't seen. Most of the time I went to the animation festivals, like
Yeah.
CPN, because that's my background, more the concept art when I worked
Uh-huh.
in Lego, and the character design. So this one, but for the pattern design, I wanted to see how it looks, and maybe
Yeah.
the Certex, or yeah. So that one I will go look at that.
Yeah, you can definitely go and just attend the show. It's
Yeah.
phenomenal. It's
That's
phenomenal to
very
see. Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. And
Yeah.
also for maybe people who want to set up a booth, do you have an experience in that? Is that like a year in advance, like Designer Con or these places, because you have to wait in a waiting list for that?
It is. So I have not shown at any of the licensing shows. I have had a booth at Quilt Market as a fabric designer later on. Again, it's a bit of a different industry show. So I have not personally shown at any of the licensing shows, but it does work about a year in advance. So you have to apply, and then there's about a year of prep work that goes into it as well.
Definitely.
But if you're considering showing, attending first to look and walk the show is a great idea.
Yeah, that's true. And also
Yeah.
when we talked about like when you were calling the art directors and having maybe some rejections, what was your experience in the kind of going through and keeping motivation like alive? What is your advice about the mental health of artists?
Oh my goodness, what a great question. Because for sure, for every yes, there are 100 no's. And so a lot of times we are so close to our artwork. I mean, it feels like a direct reflection of who we are as a human. And so it feels very vulnerable to show it. And it also feels very vulnerable to think that you're exposing yourself to critique. So kind of separating yourself from your artwork, like, yes, you made it, but it also lives on its own. And so the critique that you get on your artwork does not necessarily reflect on you. And also just knowing that art directors are really nice. I've never met a mean one. It is their job to see what artwork is available in the world, and it has to be their passion because that's what they're doing and that's what they love. So they want to see your work. They are oftentimes busy, so it may take a little bit of legwork to hear back or get in touch with them in the first place, but they want to see your work. They want to know what's available. And if it's a no, it may be a not right now. So oftentimes if it's a no, I always ask if they would be willing to see like maybe quarterly updates from me, if they would like me to show them new work when I have it, or send them quarterly updates of my latest work or something like that. So just trying to keep the connection with them over the long term, because it could be a not right now, but maybe in the future. You never know what companies' timelines are, who they're currently working with, that may shift over the years. So there's always a possibility that you will be a yes eventually.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, because that's
Yeah.
kind of important, as you mentioned, just to continue. And
Yeah.
if you think about like the maybe the hard times, as you also mentioned that at the beginning it wasn't easy. So what helped you along the way to kind of keep going or like kind of keeping towards that goal you set for yourself?
Yeah, I think just the seeing the progress, I mean, really being able to learn and then see my own progress really left me feeling like I could do this. Really built a confidence over the, before I was licensed, I really built a confidence in just in my skill set. And so I feel like I knew it was just a matter of time and was so encouraged. Even if I heard no's, I always heard something really valuable that I could take with me. And so it was always encouraging, and I just felt like it was a dream too big to let go. So um, just just absolutely kept going.
Yeah, yeah. And also when you were like developing your art style, because that's part of the like the branding or that you can be recognized for it.
Yeah,
Do you have maybe tips about that? Like, of
yeah,
course, it comes with the practice, but you kind of like think at the beginning maybe like what you
of
like or what you
course.
don't like. So
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Let's
yeah,
talk about art style.
yeah. Okay, so yeah, we typically refer to it as a signature style or an art style, and it's all the language that you get familiar with as you're in an industry. And I think that some people are born with a signature style, like they just have drawn in a particular way their whole life. For me, it terrified me. I had no idea what a signature style was, let alone what mine was, but I did know that I needed one. And so I feel that I see a lot of my students get discouraged at the very beginning because when they put pen to paper, they don't see a signature style. And so it is a process. And so for me, rather than let that fear just overwhelm me and stop me, I just kind of put my head down and did the work. And I made hundreds of patterns. I made, I think, about 200 patterns before I really looked back on my work and I could see a consistency in some of my favorite pieces. And what I had realized what I had done without even really realizing it was develop a style. I had experimented with every type of approach to artwork. So especially in surface pattern design, you can use pencils or pens or paintbrushes. You can draw on the iPad, or you can scan them in and work with Live Trace, or you can draw innately in Illustrator. There's so many different types of ways to approach the same piece of art. And so really exploring all of those different approaches and then figuring out which ones you like will slowly lead you to your signature style. And so it's a process, and one that really can't be rushed and should be completely enjoyed the whole way.
Yeah, yeah, because then later when you are working either with clients or art directors, you might be influenced in a different way. So it's a different part of the journey for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important to most of the people that I work with, they want to have a signature style. They want to be recognizable. They want to have a brand. There is definitely a market for surface pattern designers who just have the skill set to do any style. Think working at like Hallmark card company or something like that. But for the most part, the people I work with really want to develop a style, and it's important to show a consistency, especially in a portfolio, so that companies can trust you, and if they license you, they'll know what to expect from you next time. So it's definitely an art form all of its own to develop a style and then be able to, of course, make new artwork that still is true to your style, that builds trust with your community. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And so now you are creating mostly licensing artworks, right? And then you also create classes, or
Yeah.
what is the split in your the table, like
Yeah.
legs of the
Yeah.
table of income streams?
Sure. So I do a lot of things, but the three biggest income makers for me is licensing. So exactly what we're talking about. And then I teach one large course every year called Surface Design Immersion. It opens in February of every year, and it is like an intensive, immersive 8-week course where we learn everything from the ground up. We learn Adobe Illustrator from the ground up and move into pattern building, collection building, portfolio building, and the business of being a licensing artist. So I offer that once a year. And then I also have a membership called Flourish for surface pattern designers. And it's a monthly membership where members get weekly content. It is a beautiful way to just explore surface pattern design as a professional. I also have a lot of aspiring artists there. So we get to go down all different sorts of business topics in that community, like how to grow your email list or write art directors, how to work in collections and all that kind of stuff as well. So those are the big three. I also do, I do teach on some other platforms like Skillshare and Creative Live. I do at least one product every year. So I'll be doing, we'll probably talk about it in a minute, but I am coming out with a 2020 planner for this year. But that stuff is, it does contribute, but it's really fun. It's really fun for me. So.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, like before we move on to also the products and splitting the time, then as you mentioned, you started with the Skillshare classes, or you started actually with the membership side?
So I actually started my membership site first in 2012. It was called the Roost Tribe back in the day, as my blog was called Going Home to Roost. And it's changed a lot over the years, but it's still the same membership. So meaning at the very beginning, I was sending out like recipes and all this, I don't know, stuff that was a jumble of my inspirations.
And
now
lifestyle.
it's acutely... Yeah, my lifestyle. It's now acutely focused on artists and surface designers, and really where business and art collide is that's what happens there. So I started that in 2012. I started teaching on Skillshare in 2013 and Creative Live the same year. And then the immersion course started in 2018. So I've had about 1,000 students come through the immersion course. And I have about 1,700 members in Flourish currently. And so that's been the timeline.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, you do so many things. It's very hard to actually split the time and prioritize, because we as creators, we want to do everything right at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's like, let's do this. And I also just started on Skillshare, so that's super great.
Yay, very good.
So you guys can check it out as well. I will put also your links in the description. So and then we can also talk about the time and how does your day look like, or how do you set your goals and basically manage?
Yeah. So I knew we were going to talk about this, and it's really perfect, because this is why I am coming out with a planner. So one thing that I hear most frequently from my students and my members is, I don't have the time, or I'm overwhelmed. And it slowly over the past year has occurred to me that potentially this is the main thing that I have been able to really overcome that has led to my success, is time management and workflow strategies. So I am a bit of a geek about workflow strategies. And really I really wasn't until I had my first child. And so I used to have all the hours and all the days to work. And so I worked a lot very inefficiently. So I would do work, and then I would do some actual work, and then I would work and do some actual work. And so when I had my first, now I have a 6 and a 4-year-old, but when I had my son, I really had to tighten up my my workflow. And so my husband was working out of the house at the time when I had the babies, and really started studying time management and workflow, and implemented so many things over the years. And so that is what I'm sharing with this planner. So one of the things that I do is that I have an ideal work week. And so I wish I had it to show you, but there's a grid of an entire week with all the hours on it. And so I create what my perfect week would look like. And so I put when I wake up, when I work out, when I actually work, when I check emails and that kind of thing. And so I know that my week will never be perfect. But I have this as a baseline to reference when I'm scrambling or when I'm struggling to know what my schedule should be. Because I think most of us work from home, and it can be really hard to be distracted and not stick to a productive schedule. So I love using that as a baseline. I also work in time blocks. So at least 90 minutes of a time block where I remove all distraction, put my phone in another room, I turn off my notifications, and I really do the most important work that I have for the day. Yeah. And I always try to start with the things that I want to put off. So the things that are most important, I try to accomplish first, knowing that I could work all day on the things that I need to do, like update Instagram and reply to email and check in with everyone. But if that leaves me at the end of the day not accomplishing the 2 or 3 really big things that I needed to do, then I won't feel like I was productive at all. So that's a little bit into my work. Of course, also doing the one thing every day and really mapping out your long-term goals. And the short-term goals that are going to help you accomplish your long-term goal is the biggest part of it all, and definitely built into the planner as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. Did you do also like a visualization of your long-term goal? Like you drew it maybe or wrote it down as an essay?
Yeah. Not as an essay, but I love that. And I do write it down as basically like a big goal, a big dream. Mm-hmm. And there is something to be said about writing it down. There's also something to be said about saying it out loud and really being able to speak about it when things really start happening. So I walk you through writing down your biggest dreams, the ones that might be accomplishable but really scare you a little bit. And then we break them down into 3 sets of long-term, midterm, and short-term goals that will directly relate to accomplishing your dream. And then, of course, the daily tasks that get all those short-term goals actually accomplished.
Yeah, definitely, because it totally helps when you like either have it written and you write down in details almost like what you are wearing, are you working from home, are you working with someone or alone, and all of this, because then you have the vision and then you will know which doors to open or what to prepare for, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I should say this planner is called the Flourish Planner. It's going to be, I'm also teaching a course that goes along with the planner that teaches all of the strategies and workflows that I'm talking about. The course is free. You get it if you get the planner. And they will be out in mid-November, and you can sign up to be notified at surfacedesigntribe.com/planner.
Perfect. Yeah, I will put it also in the description so people can check it out, because planners are always useful, and everyone needs to find their own way what they like. So the more things you check out, then you would find the right thing for you, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. It definitely is a personal journey to finding your favorite way to work.
Yeah, because also when you mentioned like the focus, like daily focus, I actually had the opposite problem, that when I was like working, then suddenly I was working for more hours, then I didn't take breaks. So then I found the focus at will. I don't know if you tried that one, with the music, because then you can set the timer. It's like a Pomodoro technique, but you can set like either 60 minutes or 90 minutes or whatever. And then they have this like brainwave music, so you can have a classic
Yeah.
music or, like upbeat or whatever, even sounds of a
Yeah.
cafe. And then you're just like
Yeah.
working and then it stops and you're like, okay, I should take a break.
You should take a break. Oh, I love that because it is so important to reward yourself after you've accomplished that would be like a time block, a block of time where you are removing. So for me, one of the biggest things is removing distraction because when I get to a certain point of hard thinking, I'll grab my phone and I'll open Instagram and I won't even have realized that I've done it. It's just happened. And so for me, I really have to clear my desk in order to be able to drill down into my highest work for the day.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Because then if you don't have the distractions around you, then it's good. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And as you mentioned, you work from home because then you have the studio. Have you ever had the studio outside of the house, or do you always prefer to work from home?
Yeah, so I have worked from home for 10 years. And just this, you're asking right in the middle of about 3 weeks ago. My sister and my sister is a realtor, but we live in the same town, and we found an office space in the downtown area of our little town, and we're renovating it to give us both a place to work outside of home. So for me, it's doing okay today, but I live in the mountains and our Wi-Fi at my house is not incredible. So for me, this is like going to give a place where the Wi-Fi is great and it'll almost be like a sound booth. So I can do calls and recordings there without worrying about, making the whole house be quiet and that kind of thing. So yeah, so I'm really excited about it though. We're renovating it pretty extensively. So it's going to be fun.
So you do look cool with some artworks on the wall probably and all of that.
Yep. Yes, we're doing a bunch.
Oh, very nice. And you will be sharing it on social media probably, like the process.
Absolutely. I've already started. It is hideous currently. It is really, really rough looking. And so the transformation is going to be really fun to follow. Yeah, we ripped out carpet. We're taking drop ceiling down. We're painting. We're doing refinishing the original hardwood floors, like so many things that are really fun to follow. So yes.
Oh, very nice. So I'm looking forward to see it when it's finished. And now when you also mentioned actually the location, a lot of people are wondering, like, when you are starting with artistic career, of course, there are a lot of stuff is online, but why did you, for example, decided to move, or does it depend for you on the location, and how is the collaboration with other people through, internet and everything?
Yeah. So I feel like when I first started that I was fighting for freedom. So I wanted location freedom. I wanted to be able to work from anywhere in the world. I wanted financial freedom so that, who doesn't want financial freedom? So that we can do what we need to do in our life, but beyond that, be more generous in our communities and in our passions. And I wanted the freedom to be able to work from home when I did have children. So that's what I was fighting for. That's also what many of my students and members are fighting for as well. And so we do live in a really small town in North Carolina. Both of our families live here. So it was really important to us to be close to them with our children. But also, I believe it is the most beautiful place on earth. We are right in the middle of the Smoky Mountains, and we love the outdoors. So it's gorgeous. And because of the work that I do, I can do it from anywhere. So if I have a lot of people who do it full time because they love to travel and they can do it from anywhere in the world, or they do live in a place where it's not necessarily a big city or something like that. So that's why we live here. We lived in California for a little bit for my husband's job. He's a cycling coach, which took us out there for a couple of years, but we moved back, when we were ready to start a family.
Yeah. Oh, very nice. Yeah, because then it's always great to be around family if you want to live close to them, and the location independence for sure. If you either want to have your own studio or you want to travel and just mix it up and see where you want to live. And yeah, definitely. Because I get also a lot of questions about this, like how is it in different countries, either in Europe or in US, and like do you need to move somewhere to be closer to some of the jobs? And definitely. This is something to answer. What is the important for you, right? So
right, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, so all of mine, I do travel for some events at this point, but really all of my licensing work is completely done online. So it's really an incredible opportunity for sure.
yeah, yeah. And now, when you are spending some time also with the art directors and the companies you work with, do you have like weekly calls or monthly calls when you are not working on your membership and your own product? So
Yeah.
balancing the type of art, I mean work.
Yeah. So mine very much kind of goes in seasons. So every
Hmm.
industry and every company has like their own timeline for releases.
Yeah.
So I know those in advance. They're on my calendar, and
Hmm.
that's where my focus goes when it's time to work on a fabric collection or debut a fabric collection.
Hmm.
Um, so contact with the art director in a season like that is much more consistent. And then there's time where I'm focusing on teaching. But it all goes on to a yearly, like annual calendar
Hmm.
first, so that I really don't overbook myself. So I'm not trying to do a fabric collection and, for instance, the immersion course at the same time. They're all
Exactly.
staggered to where they flow beautifully. So yeah, I'm never really doing the same thing. Every day. It's always something different,
Yeah.
which is also what I love. So
Yeah, yeah, because some people like to take maybe four projects at the same time. Other people like to work on one project this month and like really focus and like finishing it. So, do
yeah.
you like also the overlap sometimes, or is it more like, okay, focus and finish this and then move on to the next thing?
There is always a little bit of overlap due to just being a working artist, but I do very much like having, okay, so for instance, the membership gets my attention all year. The immersion course is really heavy in the first quarter of the year, or really it's March, April, and May. And so it's just kind of ebbs and flows. And then my licensing is all kind of mapped out as well, depending on the industry. And so I do like having big, so you can probably see the calendar behind me is a big annual calendar where I have everything mapped out. And there is definitely a different focus for almost every month. Um, One of the summer months is just focused on family and traveling. So there is an overriding focal point of every month, but of course there's overlap for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because that definitely like works for some people. Some people like to take more things at the same time. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I also work like that, that I like to have one project and then finish on that one. There is always an overlap, but like for example, one working on a course, then you work on an illustration for a client, then you work on different things. So you can always plan ahead, like when can you take few days off maybe, or how
Yeah.
does it work?
Yes. Yes, for sure. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, and if you think about like future goals and what would be the thing you want to accomplish maybe in 5 or 10 years, what is your dream scenario later on?
Oh my goodness. You know, I definitely look a year ahead. Looking 5 or 10 years ahead is hard because what I was doing 5 years ago is much different than what it is doing today. So I've kind of learned to trust my business and where it's going, and I just don't know where it's going, and that's almost the exciting part. Um, I definitely didn't set out to be an educator and kind of got swept away by it in the best way. It's been one of the biggest kind of rewards in my life is just being able to see people accomplish their dreams and do something that they love for a living. And so I definitely feel like that is where a lot of my attention is and the thing that I love the most. So I definitely want to expand just in education and the planner is a big one. It's been on my heart for a long time. So I'm really excited that's going to be a focus of next year as well. And I mean, there's so many things in the pipeline, but just more goodness, more of the same over the next 5 to 10 years for sure.
Yeah, and if you would advise yourself, maybe if you like look at young self, right? What would you say?
I would say that this is a quote that I've heard before, but it really rings true is that it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. And I still feel that today, even when I'm doing hard things, that it's going to be worth it. And it's that long-term consistency that really rewards you in the long haul.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree because when you do what you love and then you can help others as well, that's just super nice.
It's incredible.
Yeah. And that's why I also started this podcast so we can share our experiences with others so they can get inspired and keep going and just create what they want to create. And hope everyone can like check out your membership and the planner in the future. They can also check
Thank
out
you.
our Skillshare classes. So you
Absolutely.
have a lot of classes about pattern making and also the Illustrator. So if someone wants to check that out, that will be also in the description. And I just launched the class about how to make money with art, so different ways. So another
Awesome.
inspiration. So guys, you have so much inspiration you can just check out.
So much.
Yeah,
Yep,
so
that's
so
amazing.
thank you so much again, Bonnie, for being here. It was super inspiring.
You are so welcome. And I forgot to tell everyone as well that Flourish, the membership, opens just twice a year. And it is opening on October 24th for 5 days. So if you would like to join us, that's your time to jump in, October 24th.
Perfect. Yeah, so we will keep that also in mind and in the description. So, guys, don't forget to check all of this out. There is so much value. And and thanks everyone who was watching or listening. And see you guys in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.